Solidity and look at other people's code because that's what we do. Today,
We'll just start
I
that
am
again,
joined
sorry.
by
Okay.
Okay, I am starting again. Hello everybody, and welcome to Solidity Fridays, where a couple of devs from Linum Lab around and stare at their screens and pretend they know how to read Solidity code. Join us on this epic journey with fraught overtones of personal danger and general belligerence. We are Ben Sparks, Shadowy Supercoder, Rory Simmons, Shadowy Super Community Dude, and me, A-Hat. Today, we'll be looking at Olympus DAO, otherwise known as OHM, a token that some people call DeFi 2.0, because it sounds better than DeFi 1.0. That's my introduction. All right. You're on Etherscan, right. I see. You wanted to do some Etherscan digging first, or you wanted to go straight into GitHub?
So I was thinking we go through the slide first because, so for context, guys, Will and I are a bit behind on the stuff. We are still working out exactly what Olympus DAO is and the whole OHM meme. So bear with us here. Well,
I feel like it sounds much more professional to say something. This is our first look at it, so that you too, viewer, if you are new to this, will be in the exact same setting as we are, and we won't already know all the things or something, because then we're doing everybody else a favor by being ignorant.
There's the silver lining. So, can you? How do you understand Olympus DAO so far?
Okay, let's see if I can kind of figure this out as I talk about it, because I haven't really sat down and really tried to put my thoughts together. I mean, obviously the first thing you need to know is that it says its current APY is 8,140%. So that's obviously why you have a bunch of ohmies running around screaming about ohm, because 8,140%. The basic idea, the way I understood it, is like this. Stable coins in general, or actually no, wait, does it start with stable coins? I don't even know. In any event, anytime you have a token that is getting its value by reserve, so you end up with kind of a bizarre game theory mechanism about it. That's some of it, I think. The fact that what they're doing is they're leveraging, their token OHM is going to have value based off of reserves that are owned by the protocol itself and controlled by the protocol itself, which basically, if you want other people to keep on depositing because you want the APY to stay high, it means that you don't want to pull out your own collateral. Or in other words, that game theory would point at the most stable strategy being keeping your stuff in there and not making a run with it, even though theoretically any individual who does pull and dump in the short term may make a gain off of it. They're incentivized to keep it in for a longer term gain. That's only one side of it, though. I know there's something else about I know there's other things about it also. That doesn't do any that doesn't say anything about the bonds or anything like that. But I do know that that's the whole 3-3 thing that is trying to shoot for a game theory where the most stable strategy is keeping your stuff deposited and not bank running. But that's I think that's going to be the limit of anything I can articulate.
Okay, so super interesting. So it's really, I guess, the 3-3 meme. Breaking that down is it's about sort of re-establishing a new Nash equilibrium where bondholders or liquidity providers they lock up their liquidity for the longer term, and they're not mercenary about their liquidity and just draining those inflationary token incentives.
Yeah.
Okay, that does make sense. And so for anyone watching, that's one of the new themes that people talk about with DeFi 2.0, moving from DeFi 1.0. There was a bit of a pattern, I suppose, to encourage liquidity provision or other use of the protocols through inflationary tokens, emissions. But that kind of didn't always work out so well because that people would just dump their tokens.
The second it's higher anywhere else, yeah.
Yeah,
You
and then
don't
there was a new
actually
bond. They were
inspire
taking
loyalty.
liquidity.
You just inspire yield. Yeah.
Yeah. So that I think that's a very relevant sort of goal for DeFi 2.0 in this category. Kind of started, I believe, by Olympus to go for to
Is
sort of
that how
merge
you
a more
see the
long-term.
2.0 meme?
They're saying
Like, do you see the 2.0 meme
it's
as?
partly, I think.
Mhm.
I think it's partly locking protocol-owned liquidity. So, and we need to dive into this, but I think through this process, Ohm starts to own this liquidity itself. It basically buys the liquidity through a bond process, I believe, from the liquidity providers. And then
All
it's
right, can we like
it.
break that down for like
And
a stupid finance pleb like me though? Like what bonding even means in this contract, like in this context. While I'm at it, the truth is even protocol owned liquidity. I'm like saying the buzzwords, but if you'd like really press me on exactly what that means, I'm not really sure. Like when I deposit, can I withdraw? Like, is it locked there? What can the protocol do with it? If it's called protocol owned, I'm assuming the protocol does something. How does Ohm itself have anything to do with this? Like, Ohm is not a stable token, correct? It's just like a number go up token.
No. So
like
I've got the Ohm price here. I believe this is not a stable coin, right?
Maybe it's stable like, what? Yeah.
Maybe
stable at $931.41.
Yeah. But if you look at let's look at the
don't
price,
look like that, do it.
You can see here it says rebasing, so it's a rebasing token.
Okay.
And the way you sort of measure market performance of this over time is you rather look at market cap, because if you are holding this token, the number of tokens you hold will change through rebasing, but the idea is that your percentage ownership of the total
what
supply,
you own, yeah, right,
yeah, that stays the same.
Right. I kind of there's this weird dynamic with rebasing that I never really figured out. Like what you're saying makes mathematical sense, but as someone who holds, I think, somewhere in the general vicinity of $7 of base right now, I can tell you that in practice the market does not play it that way. And like if you have more, it's like up, and if you have less, it's down. I've never really fully comprehended the irrationality around this. I tried asking like someone in finance if it made any sense, and he was like, "No, it makes no sense." It's like, yay.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm not super familiar with how base works, but I was dabbling around with some of the other stable coins like Ample and MT dollar. Yeah. So yeah, rebasing is an interesting, I guess, Ponzi-nomic feature. And you can see here, so this is the price of each individual token, and it sort of fluctuates from $250 to, I guess, all-time high was $1,400. Right.
Fascinating.
So enough of the price. Let's just like, I guess, dig into what they say this bonding process is first. So
yeah, what does it mean to bond something? Like I'm familiar with bonds from the U.S. government, like or other governments. Yeah. Like government sells you a bond. It's basically the government saying, buy this because I'm the United States government and I was cool like 50 years ago, and I'll probably pay you back someday, and I'll give you good interest in the meantime.
Exactly.
So it's just like a glorified IOU.
Pretty much, yeah. So it's exactly that. This is the traditional finance sort of bonds where you give the government or some entity $1,000, let's say, and their promise to you is that in 1 year or 2 years or 5 years, however long, they're going to give you, let's say, 10% on top of that money back. So 1 year down the line, you're going to get back your $1,000 plus 10%. So you're going to get an extra $100 of like interest to incentivize you to give your money in the first place. And I believe that's kind of what they mean here. You're depositing, you can see here, that's Frax, a stable coin, DAI, and looks like USDC. You're putting in these USDC, more established crypto tokens here into the Olympus treasury.
And they are all stables.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So that's what I was digging into here. Here's the treasury contract. We've got almost $600 million in here in crypto. It's not all stable. So we've got, what is this?
USD is Sushi
400
Swap is
million.
not though, but that LP might be on it.
Yeah, I see
That LP's
here.
it's probably on their pool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like I'm
Oh,
assuming there's
it's
like some
Ohm
kind
and
of own
Die.
pool.
It's an
Ohm
Ohm
and
and Die
Die, there
pairing.
we go.
Okay, so those are
And
essentially, I
everything
guess,
else is stable, no?
stable. Yeah.
So
Let's
I
go
guess
back
that's the
here.
protocol owned thing though. Like the protocol owns most of the liquidity in the pool with Ohm, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, what else is in there though?
So you got
So we got
LUSD, Die.
Die.
What is this?
Uni, I'm assuming it's going to be the same thing.
Another
Yeah, I'm
stable
assuming it's just
pairing.
going to be their own.
Frax and Ohm.
Ohm and Frax. Yeah.
And then they've got X Sushi, interestingly.
Well,
So that's
yeah,
just
I
staked
mean, because
sushi.
they're farming. I mean, they've got their sushi LPs. Oh, wait, but if their sushi
Yeah.
LPs are showing up, it means that they're not locked in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess
So-
some of their sushi LP tokens they're just holding and the other ones are staked. That's
So what they're
interesting.
probably doing is they're probably redeeming those sushi rewards from adding liquidity. That comes to them in sushi tokens, and then I guess they just stake that sushi for X
Oh, right,
sushi.
right. I was getting mixed up. As in, you get X sushi from staking sushi, not from staking SLP, right? As in, you get
yeah,
sushi
exactly.
rewards, you stake sushi becomes X sushi, you keep your LP tokens. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I
Okay,
get mixed up
cool.
there.
And you see there's other smaller
But then they're also
positions
in the
here.
curve wars, huh?
Yeah, but I mean these are like 200,000, 100,000 relative to their 600 million here. These are tiny
And the
positions.
rookie numbers, only 6 digits, yeah.
Yeah.
A bit of spell,
Spell
eh?
as well, hey. Shout out to Spell and Mim. That's one we got to dig into in the future as well. It's very interesting.
Yeah. And Fox, did I see that right?
Did they have Fox? They may have got the airdrop, I guess.
Yeah, I was right, they do. Oh, weird. I don't know, what's that doing there? An X rune, that's got to be some kind of airdrop. They're also farming pool, though? I don't know, a lot of funky stuff going on here once you get lower down. I don't know what that stuff is, though. I mean, like... Alright, fine. So it does seem to be a largely stable-based kind of strategy. I hear, like, Dijon Spartan in the background or something.
So stables that they then add as liquidity to earn yield in Sushi, in Uniswap, and also in strategies.
But they're holding a lot of them raw, though, which is interesting also. So it sounds like there's some kind of hedging going on. Like some of it's in a pool, some of it they're just holding. We're not seeing anything about it being locked in a vault anywhere or anything. Oh, except for maybe Curve. Maybe they're also supplying liquidity on Curve.
Maybe that's part of the strategy, because if you're adding liquidity, you do have a bit of like impermanent loss risk, right? And we can see here there's like 10% of what they're holding about is just in raw DAI, so that's not subject.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
So I guess that's the process here. The users bring in their stable coins, they deposit it. That forms a bond deposit. So in the future, they're entitled to get back some value plus interest. And I think the difference here is that they don't get back the value in their stables. They get back the value in Ohm tokens.
Interesting. So you're really betting on Ohm if you do that. You're lending them in DAI, but you're getting paid out in Ohm.
It might be that way, unless they get back their original. So we got to dig into this a bit, but maybe the other way is that they would get back their original deposit. Olympus keeps all the yield they've generated on these deposits, plus, and then the interest is just paid in Ohm tokens. All right.
Either that or Olympus is just betting kind of Alchemix style that they'll make enough yield that they can fork you yield and still, like, either because of the constant influx of capital, otherwise known as a Ponzi scheme, or the yield itself will be enough that they can give you some and keep the rest. Alchemix, actually, how does Alchemix do it? Alchemix gives some off the top when they're giving you yield, like they farm urn, and with Alchemix is keeping everything because they already gave you your yield up front in the Alchemix token, like the AL ETH or the AL DAI. So over here, I wonder if they're also just figuring that they can pay you back even in DAI, but they'll make enough off of your DAI that even paying you interest on the DAI, in DAI, they'll still have some left. I wonder.
We
But
should
yeah,
look
I
into
think you're
this
probably right.
in
It's
the
probably a no.
contracts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should see what they're paying it back in.
All right. So then, I mean, this is more that their pitch deck, true store of value. So interesting. They're now at a market cap of almost 4 billion. So I think they've been pretty successful so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's designed to grow in value. All right. Liquidity protected. All right, so I think we're at the end of this. I've got a few other tabs open here. So these are, should I drop this in chat?
Yeah.
I see Wayne is keen for us to cover spell and magic internet money in a future episode. Definitely, Wayne.
It'd be interesting if we could give a shout out to Klima in this one also, like you pointed out. I think, like, and basically what that is, just for anybody who's listening, is there have been a number of forks of Ohm recently. Fair amount of drama around that also, but even just looking at it from a technical angle, people are trying to take this method, whatever it is, because I still feel like we're kind of circling around the idea without really, like, you know, hitting it head on, and have forked it into their own platforms. Wonderland, which would be Spell. It really does seem like it's kind of the same idea a second time, but with Klima, there's this whole interesting carbon offset thing that's going on there. So, like, it'll be interesting to see, like, how this, like, if we can figure out exactly what's going on with Olympus, how that works with whatever it is that Klima's doing.
Yeah, we could dive into this, the forks of Ohm in the future. Maybe that once we get a bit of better understanding here. So then I'll drop this in chat. I've got a few of their Medium articles open, and the idea here was someone says he's getting rugged by Snowbank, and that's another fork of Ohm. And just from the Twitter stuff I'm seeing, it's one of the more degenerate ones, let's say, and the less successful ones. So yeah, I mean that's the gamble you take when you.
Well,
when you
I mean, it depends what success is, if you're the rugger or the rugged. But
exactly.
Yeah. Lisa Tan, actually, before Ohm blew up, did a whole interview with Zeus. I have to, like, actually, like, you know, I'll give her a shout out for, like, catching Olympus before it really blew up. I know it's on her YouTube. Also, for people who are more familiar with, like, or more comfortable with podcast format, I can try and find that in the meantime while you're talking.
Yeah, so I've got these open here. This is kind of the chronological timeline of Ohm's Medium articles. So we've got the start here. This was the game theory that we were talking about, where really what they were trying to establish is a cooperative strategy where liquidity providers or those bond buyers come to an equilibrium where they're cooperating with Ohm and provide their liquidity, and in exchange they get back a valuable payout in those Ohm tokens. And on Ohm's side, it's the most beneficial strategy to play because they will build up their ownership of this liquidity, and they will become, I guess at this point, it's one of the largest sort of protocols that own its own liquidity and aren't sort of subject to the mercenary liquidity providers of DeFi. And that seems to have worked out so far. So they're trying to shift, I guess, from this strategy or from any of these suboptimal strategies all the way up in the Nash equilibrium to this 3-3 thing. And that's the meme. This one looks very short. 1.1. This, I think, is covering the treasury and stuff that we already dived into. Staking, okay. And this is, once you've got your own tokens, I believe you can stake it. You'll get S-Ohm. And this is probably how you capitalize on that rebase. So periodically, more tokens will be issued through the rebase. And it's probably such that if you're staked, yeah, there we go. You're going to miss out on your rebases if you're not staked. So if you stake, you get more of those newly issued tokens. And if you're not staked, you kind of are getting inflated away. So like, there's more tokens in supply, and you've got the same amount in your wallet, so that you kind of are reducing your cut in value through inflation.
The percentage of the, okay, so actually what you were saying before when we were first on CoinGecko about market cap and the value of each ohm token. So this actually kind of affects that a bit, because if you're staking in S ohm, so then you're going to keep, but if everybody had staked on S ohm, then whenever there would be a rebase, everybody would come out with the same percentage of tokens on the platform. But once certain people are not staked,
Exactly.
so then they're going to actually slide on their percentage of the total cap of tokens.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
it's like a selective rebase.
Yeah. And you can see that's kind of what's happening here. There's 90% stake. That's a lot of people staking, which is great for the price of ohm as well, by the way, because then there's essentially only 10% out in the open market that can even be sold. So very little sell pressure on the price of the token. So 90% of people are receiving their rebase rewards. And that's why, I guess, in this DeFi 2.0 world, 8,000% APY is relatively low. And I see they mention it
What
down
does that
here.
APY mean, though? Like, what's that APY getting measured in? Is it getting measured in ohm tokens?
Yeah, so I think the way most of these protocols do it is they say, what's the current value of our token, and how many tokens am I giving you over a year? And then let's convert that to sort of a percentage return.
But that should be a bit misleading in this case, no? Because the value per token is expected to decrease significantly over time. No?
I don't know if it's expected to decrease significantly over time.
Due to the pressure from inflation? Like, I'm starting off with 100. I expect to have 1,000 by the time the year is over, but I don't expect to have 10 times the value in, say, like DAI or something like that, no?
Yeah, maybe it's sort of like a trickling off of inflation where it slowly declines as it builds up its own liquidity. Because the other factor is that all of these ohm tokens are supposed to be backed, right? They back the outstanding. The treasury builds up these reserves, which back the ohm tokens.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like the protocol own liquidity thing, I think. As in, you've got the price being propped up by the liquidity pools. The protocol controls the liquidity pools. But then, whatever in the liquidity pool is not going to get the rebase also. Interesting.
So, and then here they say they kind of confirm that more ohm staked reduces the APY. So if there were fewer people staked,
yeah,
the APY would be higher. I guess it's because it's a constant issuance of these tokens over time. And so if there are more people kind of staked, then you're sharing that constant issuance amongst more people. And then that's probably a declining issuance over time. So it's not always going to be the sort of insane 10,000% APY. All right. So let's probably touch on these last two little news points here before we dive into the code. Olympus Pro, I believe, is their offering. It's sort of like almost a B2B offering between DeFi protocols. So Ohm will offer this sort of protocol-owned liquidity service to other DeFi protocols that they can come in and take part in this, and then start to own their own liquidity. I think Stake DAO is one of them doing this. I think Frax as well. And they will basically sort of probably pay some sort of fee to Olympus DAO for this service. And then the other thing is this V2. They're going to launch V2. I haven't even looked into this, but it's quite interesting now that all these forks are coming out of Olympus. There's obviously pressure to innovate and to grow. So of course they got to announce V2, and there's probably some nice innovations going on here. Should we just skim through these real quick?
Up to.
Bonds no longer
bonds are
invest
NFTs.
linearly. Wow. So the payouts are staked at the time of purchase. That's interesting. So it's sort of immediate staking and minimizes selling pressure. Nice. It doesn't vest linearly, so that's quite interesting. It it only vests, I guess, at the end of the bond term. So if you pull out before, you're probably not going to get your rewards. So there's new bond types. Maybe this is to have custom offerings for their Olympus Pro section, so they can have like custom bonds suited to DeFi protocols. Held as NFTs. Interesting. That's probably going to affect the liquidity, right? Because they're not fungible. You can't just set up a Uniswap pool.
Yeah. At least not yet.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't think Uniswap will have something for that, but like it's interesting the idea of like an NFT to prevent creating a market. Just to answer a question from chat, the NFT at that point really becomes kind of like an IOU, I would assume. Uniswap does their LP tokens like this now in V3, that your NFT basically represents your position. And like even if you change your position, you add more liquidity, you withdraw liquidity with UniV3 at least, it even like changes details inside your NFT. So you can almost see the NFT as like just kind of a note that this is your stake, this is what you've got, these are its details, and then when you withdraw, you burn the NFT and get your liquidity back. So I'd assume the bond here works in a similar way. You've got your bond details in the NFT, and so if you want to redeem the bond, you burn the bond through Ohm, and then it gives you your stuff back with or without your rewards, depending on where you are on the schedule.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason they're using NFTs instead of just ERC20s for fungible tokens is because everyone's bonds are probably going to be different. They might have different expirations, so your different expiration dates. They say here you could have fixed term or fixed expirations. You could buy like a one that ends at the end of 2021, or one that is 1 year from wherever you start. So all of these bonds are going to kind of have different properties, and that's why they're not exactly fungible between each other, and that's why they need to be represented as NFTs. All right, and it's great to hear that they're going to have an audit. That's always good.
It's great to hear that they're going to have an audit. That's where the bar is. That is where the bar is. We're going to have an audit someday. Yes! You know, nothing like we've been very responsible and audited ourselves. Like someday we're sure we're going to have a really good firm audit us.
Yeah, I mean, you're holding $4 billion of value. It's really great to hear that you're just going to check.
Going to be audited someday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's always good. Okay, and they're going to have a nice migration process. Nice. That is exciting.
Does that mean they have proxy contracts? Are they doing?
I don't know.
Behind a proxy?
They may. It may also be sort of a.
Can you go back to the Etherscan tab?
Sure. Which one? Here I am at the their contracts repo. And
no, from Etherscan it should be pretty easy to check if they're behind a proxy also. If you go to contract in Etherscan, it'll like tell you if you're reading or writing from behind a proxy.
So, well, okay. Here's the allocator one. It doesn't look like a proxy.
Okay,
right?
so that one looks like it's not behind a proxy.
The treasury, let's check this. Nope, just a straight up treasury contract.
Okay, straight up migration. All right, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
that's what we like to see.
So chat, if it were a proxy, you would have these buttons, so you could go look at the functions here, read contract, or you would have these other two more buttons that would say read contract as proxy or write contract as proxy, I believe.
Yes.
Right. So let's dive into the code. Let's get rid of this.
Let's.
Here's the repo. Very cool stuff. And here are the contracts. So here's a diagram. Do you want to try and unpack this, Will?
Yeah, let's take a look at that. Give me a sec. I'm actually going to open it up in another tab. Actually, no, I'll just use yours. Okay, so what do we got? Let's start from user. So that's on the right side. Call deposit, send reserves. Call redeem, sends own. So, okay, let's look at the deposit flow here. So if the user deposits, that's going to something called the bond depot. And then it's going from there to the treasury. Okay, from the treasury, it looks like there's a few different destinations we could be getting. So, like, let's try and follow this. There's some DAI coming in here. So that DAI will go to the treasury. It looks like the treasury can also be getting from the distributor. Then it could be sending DAI theoretically to the allocator. Do we know what the allocator is?
So I think that is, if we look down here, that's how they allocate their assets in the treasury to different protocols, to liquidity or staking or something. So you've got an Aave allocator, Convex, Onsen. So this is the sushi farming.
Got it. Yeah. So the allocator is how they farm some of it, and then some of it gets sent into Ohm itself to back Ohm, I'm assuming. So it just like sits in the Ohm contract or something like that. I'm assuming once we hit the Ohm circle, anything that's coming out of there is Ohm now as opposed to DAI. So it could be sending back to the bond depot, which could then be redeemed by the user. Could you scroll up just a tiny bit so I can get the top of the diagram also? There we go. And then it also is sending Ohm to staking so that it can rebase the S Ohm. Okay, right, yeah, that makes sense. As in, the Ohm that's coming out of Ohm isn't necessarily one, like, I'd say it like this. I'm assuming right now that you've got DAI coming into, or whatever, coming into Ohm from the treasury, but then the Ohm coming out of the treasury can be coming out of there for two reasons. One could be to deposit in the bond depot to allow a user to redeem by sending their Ohm, to redeem their staked Ohm, probably, into Ohm. And then the other is when it mints Ohm to distribute to S Ohm stakers. So it can also emit Ohm, which will go to staking, which will then be used for the rebase on S Ohm, I would assume.
Yeah.
And then you've also got the distributor, who I'm assuming is taking yield. The distributor and the allocator, I'm assuming, are kind of the same cloth. The allocator is the one that's distributing to farms to yield, and then the distributor, I'm assuming, is taking rewards and putting them into the platform.
I'm not sure exactly where the distributor comes into play here, because it doesn't. I guess it's responsible for managing any sort of yield rewards that it's farmed, and bringing that back into the treasury.
Yeah, I'm guessing something like that also.
But that could also be done by the allocator, because there's this directional call deposits and reserves. You're right. Yeah. So I think we've kind of unpacked this a bit here. It does seem like quite a nice economic system they've built. Where do we want to start looking through this code? Here are the bonds.
I would say either Ohm or the bond depot.
So this is the token contract. Why do we look here? Should be interesting.
Token contract? Okay.
Staking contract. All right. So this is just
looking at the actual contract names. I'm assuming that's Olympus ERC20 because it doesn't actually, like, it's interesting. Their file names aren't the same as the ones in the README.
Let's maybe go to these.
It's always interesting for me to see what environment people are using. So you can see here, there's a hard hat config. Was it JS or TS? I didn't notice. In the root JS. I didn't flip it over to TypeScript. It's shaking my head. But they are using a hard hat environment.
Yeah. Well, when was this started? Because this is like July, or probably June, July. So yeah, I think at this point this year, hard hat was already like had solidified itself as the standard dev environment for Solidity.
Right, but you still get some truffle out there, and occasionally you'll also get some brownie and some DAppTools. DAppTools, like, I think it's been shilled enough that I wouldn't immediately be like, whoa, if I saw DAppTools, but like there is like a certain level of respect that I'll hold things to a bit of a higher standard, I think, if it's a DAppTools environment. It meant you had to be able to set it up. Do you know the thing about the study about people who use Chrome and Firefox?
No.
There's some study. I wish I remembered the numbers or exactly what direction it was going in, but there was a study that showed that people who use Chrome and Firefox tend to be more productive or creative or something like that. And the general reason that was accepted was because it actually involves having to download it as opposed to using a system default. Unless you're on Linux, but then you had to download Linux. So being that like you showed enough initiative to actually pick a browser and download it, like shows that same skill carries across. I kind of feel like that with DAppTools to some degree. It shows that you could get Nix working, get DAppTools up, and that you can actually write your tests in Solidity.
Yeah. So there's a bit of like a barrier to entry. So it really sort of filters out people who can't do anything, and then you're left with people using it who are already pretty competent and capable of building stuff, and then they are your fans and your I guess your community, and so they already have like a trustworthy sort of like name out there because they've built stuff before. That's quite interesting.
Which is this the ERC20?
Yeah, oh my gosh, so I'm in the contract here.
Why did they do this? Why did they flatten it here?
Man, safe math. This is back in the pre 0.8.
Yeah, I didn't notice. Which compiler is this? 7.5.
7.5. Right. Yeah. So
they have permits though.
Safe math. So they're using a 777, hey?
They're using a 777?
Oh, okay. So it's an ERC20, but it looks like they're trying to maintain some compatibility with 777, which is maybe that's how they're doing rebasing.
Funk. I don't remember enough about 777s to say. Do you remember what 777s are? I'm actually looking.
I think the idea of the 777s were that they would avoid the sort of approve process.
Yeah, but how do they do that? Oh, because of callbacks. They use like a callback or something?
I have no idea. I never really dug into it because everyone on Twitter told me it was very insecure to use that.
Yeah, it never took off.
Yeah.
I think that's what looking at it right now, it references EIP 1820 a bunch also. I'm assuming 1820 was some way to try and make it more secure.
It's looking like a pretty standard ERC20 at this point. Oh, I guess, okay, that is the abstract contract. That would look like a standard.
Yeah.
I suppose.
It has to get further down. But even the bottom's very boring also.
All right. Yeah, that's super standard. Just an ERC20, and we're setting some parameters here. 9 decimals. Interesting.
That's interesting.
Very interesting.
Let's say, what was I going to say? What's this vault-owned contract?
Yeah, I was just going to say, what is vault-owned?
Address internal vault, set vault, and only
it's going to be in here.
So basically, yeah, it's like an ownable for a vault.
All right. Okay, so it's just an ownable. So this
it's on mint. Only the vault can mint.
Yeah, this code would entitle some sort of vault contract to have a bit of ownership powers over the token and be able to mint and probably burn as well. I assume. Yeah, there's burn as well.
Right, and then you only owner on the vault so that the owner can pick where the where the vault is. Which is interesting. It does make me wonder it does make me wonder who the owner is here, or what the owner is. It's probably some multi-sig or something. Look for a Chris Black thread. He loves digging into that stuff.
Okay, so that was the standard stuff, the ERC20, the token. We want to get a bit deeper here now, I think.
I agree.
Should we look at the bond flow? Where's that?
Sure. Bond depository would be the first place that goes.
Probably. Let me just go back to this. Bond depot. There we go. Sure.
Yeah. And it's interesting that there's 2 bond depositories. There's the WETH bond depository, so wrapped ETH. And then there's also
this one. This is probably for stables.
There's also WOM. Why would you need wrapped OM? Unless this then S Olympus ERC20 has its own final loss one. Why you need wrapped OM?
I'm so curious. I'm just going to look at that really quickly.
Yeah. See if their comments say or something.
Where is the?
And it's another flattened contract. Excellent.
Oh man. This is so hard to read.
So 20, where are
what
we?
What are they doing here? Wrapped
ERC20.
Is this maybe because staked OM is not really a fungible ERC20 maybe? I'm not sure if that's the reason. and they now need to wrap that somehow to make it tradable. Because you see, they have their addresses, they have the staking contract. Oh, but then this would be its own token, I suppose. It's only ERC20, and then
It makes me wonder what SOM is then. But it does look like, yeah. I'm looking at the lower functions. You see that like it seems to be 3 distinct entities.
SOM is staked OM, I think.
Yeah, it is for sure. But I'm saying like, how does WOM fit into SOM and OM?
Yeah, I have no idea why they need a wrapped token.
Yeah. But we only got 15 minutes, so if we want to take a look at this
proposal,
we better.
So let's get back to the bond depository. This is the interesting stuff. Okay, again, very flattened. Lots of libraries in here. Permit, fixed point stuff. Here we go. All right. Well, do you feel like running this?
Sure, I'll look on with you then. Okay, so using fixed point. Whose fixed point library were they using? Actually, no, don't worry about it. I don't want to get stuck into that. I'm curious who they were using for fixed point. Fixed point, basically, Solidity does not have any decimals in it. So you have to basically make pretend anytime you want to use decimals. There's even some libraries out there to help you have something that looks more like decimals. The reason why, just long story very short, is actually surprisingly, in most programming languages, once you start dealing with like a lot of decimal places, the math actually is not accurate. Because most of the time, nobody really cares if 12 decimals deep, you have a bit of an inconsistency. But the problem is in Ethereum, you actually do, because you're dealing intrinsically with value, and there's very deep decimal places. So they just took out decimal points entirely in Solidity. So you have some libraries that try and give it back to you. So they're using fixed point for that. Safe ERC20 is a library from OpenZeppelin that makes sure that your transfers are a bit more safe than they would be naturally. You should always, always, always use it if you have to deal with ERC20s inside a contract. Events, let's take a look. This oftentimes is a bit of a hint for like what's going to be coming. They do their events before their state variables. Shaking my head, the Solidity style guide says to do them after their state variables, but whatever, I can give a pass on that one. It's not too egregious. We have bond created, bond redeemed, bond price changed, control variable adjustment. I don't know what that last one means, but the other ones are a little bit simpler, as in we understand that bonds are being created and redeemed inside this contract. Okay, cool. We've got a bunch of immutable variables. An immutable variable in Solidity means that you set it in the constructor and it can never change after that. Constant has to be set in the code itself, like you'd have to have address public immutable equals and then hard code the address in. If you put constant on it, it can never be changed. It does save you some gas. And it also gives you some immutability guarantees. So address public immutable principal, token used to create bond. So there's only one. There's only one token that can be used to create a bond. That's surprising to me. I would have thought you could do it in a bunch. But I guess not. Address public immutable treasury, mints ohm when receives principal. Okay. All right, so that already gives us a hint about the treasury. The treasury is going to mint whenever it receives principal, most likely, which probably means some kind of callback. An immutable DAO receives profit share from bond. Okay, so when you buy a bond, there's a portion that seems to be going to a DAO. Okay. Bool public immutable is liquidity bond. LP and reserve bonds are treated slightly different. So you've got a lot of these, actually, I'm assuming. So I kind of take that back. Before, I was surprised to see that there was only one principal address. I'm assuming that there's a number of these contracts. Except that doesn't really make sense with the README. The README only pointed at one, right?
No, I've got that here. I'm just looking that up now.
So there are a few. Yeah, there are a few different. There's DAI, Frax, and Frax. Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. And that's why it has that flag there to see if it's LP tokens or not.
Sorry. Is this?
I do like their
where we
commenting
start
so
thinking-
far, incidentally.
Yeah, they're
On this one, at least.
quite clean code.
They've organized
that.
nicely. They're commenting well. Yeah, we'll give them
There you
some
go.
style points on this one.
So this is a version. This is the version of the bond depository specifically for DAI bonds. So that's why there's only that one principal token address. This would be the DAI address. And then there will be another version of this contract here for if you wanted to do a Frax bond and deposit Frax as the principal.
Right. And then another one for the LPs also.
Exactly.
Right, cool.
And the LP tokens are also fungible ERC20 tokens. So you could use the same code.
Right. Be interesting to see something like this on V3 positions. Like take that, like use NFTs like more financially. Okay, so then bond calculator is also an address. Yeah.
Well, while we
go for it.
I think we're coming to like the last 10 minutes of this. Should we ask chat what they want to see next, and just to give us some ideas in the chat?
Sure.
I mean, we'll still go through the code now, but yeah, what do you guys want to see next? What DeFi stuff? Do you want to see NFT stuff, metaverse stuff, layer ones? We could also review things from a more
layer one DeFi in the metaverse.
Yeah, trading investor perspective, or from a more code perspective. What do you guys want to see? All right, chat. You better write some stuff here, and then we're going to carry on with the code. All right, well.
Yeah. So we've got the bond calculator, which calculates the value of the LP tokens. That's interesting to me, and it's an address. Strikes me kind of library-like, something that's like kind of price oracle-like. And we all know how much we love external calls to price oracles. Address public staking to auto stake payout. Okay. Address public staking helper. You saw that in one of the articles, right? It auto stakes when you're giving in money for a bond. So I'm assuming it auto stakes some, it sends some to the DAO, sends some to the treasury, or something like that. Actually, yeah, that is a bit interesting. I'm a bit confused what's going on. Yeah. It needs to auto-stake directly, or it mint stakes that. I don't know. Unless here maybe it's staking the DAI into farms? I don't know. We'll find out. Staking helper. To stake and claim if no staking warm up. I guess we'll have to see what that concept is. Bool use helper. Okay, so there's something called a staking helper, which is probably some kind of like robo investor. And there's a flag there for turning it on and off. Terms, public terms. That's as in like a term of time, apparently, and adjust is to adjust them. So terms have a control variable, a vesting term, a minimum price versus principal value, a maximum payout, interesting, a fee, and max debt. Interesting again. Bond payout, vesting, last block price paid. Yeah.
So I think this is basically the features of the bond, and this is kind of where the NFT-ness of things come from. So each bond could have a different vesting term or a minimum price of the principal value. Yeah.
Yeah.
Continue. Continue, sir.
I wonder what shows up in the metadata. As in, NFTs traditionally kind of have two halves. There's the half that's on-chain and the half that's off-chain, which is JSON. The part that's off-chain is generally a JSON. At least that's what's specified. That has various properties in it. I wonder if they're actually like flipping the JSON anytime details change. That's also a question for Uniswap v3. Like, I wonder if anything changes in the JSON. The Uniswap v3 image on the NFT, does it have like specific details about your position, or just what pool you're in?
In the actual SVG image.
The NFT, like you can see your positions on OpenSea if you would be so inclined. There's like this cool little image there.
Yeah, I know. Like the card thing, yeah. But I think you only get that if you are creating the pool. I think you only get it for creating the pool, and then if
Really?
you're just a liquidity provider in the pool, you don't get the card, but your LP position is represented by an NFT, a different NFT, not a visual.
Oh, funky.
I think. Yeah.
I should check into that. All right, cool.
No, maybe.
And
Yeah,
then we
maybe
have
I'm wrong
initialized
actually, because I do remember. Actually that you could see on that card that you're adding liquidity within a certain range. So
yeah, I thought so too, and I thought I had a
that
card, and I really don't
another
think
time.
that I don't think that I ever started the pool there.
Okay.
Yeah. How would NFTs be able to cross metaverse? That's a good one. Bridges. Maybe we do bridges in a future episode.
Bridges. DJ Spartan's favorite.
Huh?
DJ Spartan has an issue with bridges because he, the monsters from what's that movie? It's like the kaijus and the big robots.
Iron Giant?
Oh man, no. That's a recent one where they're like the monsters living like in the center of the earth, or they come through portals or something. And the Pacific Rim, yes, thank you, Royd Pumper. Pacific Rim, and DJ Spartan was saying that the kaijus love to attack the bridges and like talking about the Golden Gate Bridge and stuff. So maybe we shouldn't all be locking our funds up in the bridges. Yes. Sorry for the weird movie references. Continue.
Initial bond terms. It's not your weird movie reference. It's DJ Spartan's reference. Initialized bond terms. So okay. So unsurprisingly, pretty much all of the details in the structure just passed in his arguments here, and only a policy can call it.
Yeah.
Interesting. What were policies? Do we remember that? Can you like double click on my policy and maybe like find search it? Isn't that modifier only policy?
Yeah, let's see what that is. It's just an ownable. So.
Okay, yeah, same thing as owner.
Okay, that's an interesting phrasing, I suppose.
Yeah. So only the owner can call this. I wonder who the owner is then. Because like you assume that this is automated. I wonder who's owning and calling them. But yeah, so what do we have here? Oh, it's doing this whole setup. Now we have like more stuff underneath. Like they're making a new enum over here. Oh man, come on guys, use the Solidity style guide.
Yeah.
Set like I was sure we were like coming to the end of the contract or something. Enum parameter, set bond terms, parameter. Input external only policy. If parameter is vesting, then the input has to be longer than 36 hours. If the parameter is payout, then the payout can't be more than 1%. And if it's a fee. So, okay, it sounds like these are the three different kinds of bonds. There's a vesting bond, a payout bond, and a fee bond, and a debt bond. That doesn't make so much sense to me. I don't think that could be right.
I think they've kind of bunched all the different types of parameters into one setter function. So you specify which parameter of the bond, I believe, you're setting. And then you pass in the amount. The value that you're actually setting.
I get what you're saying, but then you have to call it four times. I guess it is for new bonds though. Does that mean they have to just hit it 4 times for a new bond? I wonder.
It might also be global parameters.
It says, I get what you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you're saying global parameters. It's a way of just cramming 4 things into one. Yeah, good call. All right. Set control
Dyson
variable
Alpha into the chat.
There you have addition, increment, target, and buffer. So I'm assuming the next one. The next one actually seems to be able to hit 4 at once. I'm assuming that you need kind of all 4 of these interacting together. The addition, the increment, the target, and the buffer. I know a lot of times what we do when we're dealing with decimals is we'll have a rate and a scale. Like, let's say you want 5, so then maybe you'll put down like a 5 with, or 5,000. Like, what is it? You'd use like 5,000 with 1e6 or something like that, so that you can multiply by, or 1e4 would be 50%. Sorry, that if you 500 and 1e4. So that you can multiply by the rate, 500, then divide by 10 to the 4th.
Yeah.
And get the right number. I wonder if that's something like that also. So now we have deposit, and we have 1 whole minute to look at this. I'm wondering if this means we do next week also, just because we're almost only getting started here.
I think so. Well, I think we should definitely try and cover this more thoroughly. Maybe we can set up another time, not necessarily on Friday, next week. And then, because we're only now getting into really the actual meat of the bonds here.
Yeah. Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah. All right. Do you wanna cover this, or should we wrap it up here? Rory,
I think we better wrap it up. We're at 1:30.
They're gonna shout at us.
So yeah, they all gonna shout. So, but yeah, maybe we try and fix this up next week and get a bit further. And otherwise, then maybe we just pretend this never happened and do something completely random next week. Excellent. Or both. In any event, thank you all very, very much for showing up. Feel free to leave any comments at Rory with any criticism or anything that that we should be doing. Big shout out to Rory for taking care of all the technicals here. Thank you so much. And to Ben.
Thanks, Rory.
And see you all next week.
Hey, you will.
Cheers.
See you guys next week. Cheers.